The setup, Harmony Station. Marcus Chen pressed his palm against the cold viewport as Harmony Station grew larger in the darkness of space. The massive structure looked like a giant mechanical flower, its 8 arms stretching outward to accommodate different atmospheric and gravitational needs. Each arm housed one of the major galactic civilizations, while the central hub remained neutral territory. After 400 years of war, this station represented the galaxy's last hope for peace. Impressive, isn't it? Elena Vasquez joined him at the window. The former Space Marine carried herself with the controlled grace of someone who had seen too many battlefields. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, but her brown eyes held a warmth that military training couldn't erase. Hard to believe something so beautiful was built just so we could argue. Marcus nodded, adjusting his simple black diplomatic suit. At 45, he had negotiated corporate mergers worth billions and mediated trade disputes between human colonies. But this was different. This wasn't about money or territory. This was about ending a war that had consumed the galaxy for 4 centuries. Dr. Sarah Kim approached them, carrying a tablet loaded with cultural briefings. At 52, she was humanity's foremost expert on alien psychology and had spent decades studying the 5 major civilizations. Her silver-streaked hair and patient demeanor made her seem like everyone's favorite professor. "The docking procedures are complete," she said. "We're scheduled to meet with the other delegations in 2 hours. I've prepared updated files on each species' current political situation." Marcus took the tablet and scrolled through the information. The Saurian Empire, reptilian beings known for their honor-based culture and military prowess. The Hive Collective, insectoid creatures that operated through shared consciousness and perfect coordination. The Ethereal Union, energy beings who had transcended physical form millennia ago. The Crystalline Federation, silicon-based life forms that communicated through harmonic resonances. And the Aquatic Assembly, water-dwelling beings with complex social hierarchies. "Any changes from our last briefing?" Marcus asked. "The Saurians lost another border world to Hive expansion last month," Sarah replied. 3,000 military casualties. The Ethereals are claiming the Crystalline Federation disrupted their meditation networks during the Proxima incident. Same old grievances, same old anger. Elena shook her head. 400 years of this. My great-great-grandmother fought Saurian raiders. My grandfather died defending a colony from hive swarms. And here we are, trying to make peace with species that have been killing each other since before humans discovered fire. "That's exactly why we might succeed," Marcus said. "We don't have centuries of hatred clouding our judgment. We can see patterns they might miss." They walked through the docking corridor toward the central hub. The architecture changed as they moved from the human section into neutral territory. The walls became smoother, the lighting softer, and the air carried a faint scent of ozone from the station's atmospheric processors. The main conference chamber was a marvel of engineering. The circular room was divided into 5 sections, each designed to accommodate different biological needs. The Saurian area had raised platforms and heat lamps. The Hive section featured complex geometric patterns that pleased their compound eyes. The ethereal space was simply empty air where energy beings could float freely. The crystalline zone resonated with harmonic frequencies, while the aquatic section contained tanks of specially treated water. The human delegation took their place at a simple table in the center, emphasizing their role as neutral mediators. Admiral Kexthen of the Saurian Empire was the first to arrive. The 7-foot-tall reptilian being moved with military precision, his scales a deep green that reflected the chamber's lights. His delegation wore ceremonial armor that had been passed down through generations of warriors. Human mediators, Kexthen's translator device rendered his hissing speech into clear English. "Your species has no understanding of our ancient conflicts. Why should we trust your judgment?" "Because we have no stake in your ancient conflicts," Marcus replied calmly. "We want peace because war serves no one's interests." Overseer Zilmuth arrived next, leading a group of Hive representatives. The insectoid beings moved in perfect synchronization, their chitin-covered bodies clicking softly as they took their positions. Zilmoth's compound eyes reflected the room's lights like jewels. "The hive requires expanding territory for our growing population," the overseer's mental voice translated directly into their minds. "The Saurians block our natural expansion with military aggression. Your expansion threatens our sacred worlds," Kex then shot back. "Worlds our ancestors have protected for millennia." High Counselor Velnera of the Ethereal Union materialized as a shifting pattern of light and energy. The ancient being had witnessed the beginning of the Galactic Wars and spoke with the weight of centuries. "Both of your peoples forget the original causes of this conflict." Velnera's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Fear has replaced reason. Pride has consumed wisdom." The Crystalline Federation's representative, Resonance Bearer Quilden, entered with a musical chiming that indicated formal greeting. The translucent being's body caught and refracted light into beautiful patterns as they moved. Finally, Flow Leader Nyx Era of the Aquatic Assembly arrived in a specialized mobility suit filled with her native ocean water. Her tentacles moved gracefully as she adjusted to the chamber's environment. "The deep currents speak of change," she said, her voice carrying the rhythm of ocean waves. "Perhaps these talks will succeed where others have failed." Marcus looked around the chamber at beings who had been enemies for longer than human civilization had existed. Each delegation was perfectly prepared, their arguments polished by centuries of repetition. "Before we begin formal negotiations," Marcus said, "I'd like to understand the current state of the conflict. What specific issues are preventing peace?" For the next 6 hours, Marcus listened to the same arguments that had been made for 4 centuries. Territorial disputes over star systems, trade route disagreements, resource allocation conflicts, cultural misunderstandings that had escalated into military actions. But as the day progressed, Marcus began to notice something strange. The delegates' arguments were almost identical to transcripts from previous peace summits. Not similar, identical. Word for word, the same grievances, the same demands, the same threats. During a break, Alina pulled him aside. "Something's not right," she whispered. "I've been monitoring station communications, and there's more encrypted traffic than there should be. Someone's coordinating these discussions." Sarah joined them, looking puzzled. "The behavioral patterns are all wrong," she said. "These species should show more variation in their diplomatic approaches. It's like they're following a script." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. "What kind of script?" "The kind that ensures these talks fail," Alina said grimly. "I'm detecting financial transfers between unknown accounts and some of the delegations. Large amounts of money changing hands." That evening, Marcus sat in his quarters reviewing the day's proceedings. The arguments had been passionate and convincing, but they felt rehearsed. Each delegate had hit specific talking points at precise times. When the Saurians demanded territorial concessions, the hive responded with population pressure arguments. When the ethereals spoke of ancient wisdom, the crystallines countered with harmonic disruption claims. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Marcus checked his communicator, expecting a briefing update from Earth Command. Instead, he found an encrypted file from an unknown sender. His hands trembled as he opened the file. Inside were financial records, communication logs, and shipping manifests that painted a horrifying picture. The war wasn't being fought by 5 civilizations. It was being managed by a network of weapons manufacturers, military contractors, and resource extraction companies that spanned all 5 species. The corporate syndicate, as the file labeled them, had been prolonging the conflict for profit. Every time peace seemed possible, they would arrange an incident to restart hostilities. Every treaty negotiation was designed to fail, maintaining the status quo that kept them wealthy. Marcus scrolled through evidence of arms sales to both sides of conflicts, resource extraction contracts that required ongoing instability, and communication records showing coordination between supposedly enemy corporations. The file also contained a personal message. The human delegation was invited not to broker peace, but to take the blame when these talks fail. You are the perfect scapegoats, new to galactic politics and small enough to be discredited. The Syndicate plans to frame humanity for sabotaging the negotiations, justifying another century of profitable war. Marcus stared at the message as the implications sank in. Earth had sent him here believing they were making history, establishing humanity as a force for peace in the galaxy. Instead, they were walking into a trap that would destroy Earth's reputation and ensure the war continued. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Alina and Sarah entered, both looking grim. "We found more evidence," Alina said, setting down a datapad. "Shipping records show weapons deliveries to all 5 civilizations from the same manufacturing networks. They're literally selling guns to everyone and then profiting from the ammunition." Sarah sat down heavily in a chair. The psychological profiles make sense now. The delegates aren't representing their people's true interests. They're following instructions designed to maintain conflict. Marcus looked at his colleagues, feeling the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on them. In 24 hours, the formal peace proposals would be presented. If the pattern held, each proposal would be rejected, the talks would collapse, and humanity would be blamed for the failure. "We have a choice," Marcus said finally. "We can play along with their game and hope for the best, or we can expose the truth and see what happens." "Exposing the truth could get us killed," Alina pointed out. "The Syndicate has too much invested in this war to let us walk away. And playing along guarantees that billions more people will die in pointless conflicts." Sarah added, "Not just aliens. Human colonies are already being targeted as we expand into space." Marcus stood and walked to his viewport, looking out at the vast station where 5 civilizations had gathered in the name of peace. Somewhere out there, honest beings were hoping for an end to centuries of suffering. Somewhere else, corporate executives were calculating profit margins from continued warfare. "I've spent my career finding solutions to impossible problems," Marcus said. "But this isn't a negotiation. This is a performance designed to fail. The only way to win is not to play their game." "What are you suggesting?" Alina asked. Marcus turned back to his companions, his decision made. "Tomorrow, when they expect us to follow their script, we're going to do something they won't anticipate." "What's that?" Sarah asked. "We're going to tell the truth," Marcus said. "And then we're going to walk away." Alina raised an eyebrow. "Walk away from the most important peace summit in galactic history." "Walk away from a lie," Marcus corrected. "Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's game." As they prepared for what might be the most important day in galactic history, none of them could have predicted how one human's simple act of walking away would shatter a system that had controlled the galaxy for centuries. But that revelation would come tomorrow, when Marcus Chen would stand up in front of the most powerful beings in known space and do something that would change everything. The fate of the galaxy would turn on a single moment of human stubbornness, the refusal to accept that war was inevitable and peace was impossible. Because sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply saying no and meaning it. The walkout that changed everything. The second day of negotiations began exactly as Marcus Chen had predicted. Each delegation presented their formal peace proposals right on schedule, and each proposal was rejected with precisely the same arguments used in previous summits. The script was playing out perfectly. Admiral Kexthan stood at his delegation's platform, his scales reflecting the chamber's lights as he spoke. "The Saurian Empire cannot accept any agreement that fails to acknowledge our historical claims to the Centauri defense zones. These worlds contain the graves of our ancestors." Overseer Zilmoth's compound eyes glittered as her mental voice filled the chamber. "The Hive requires expansion territory for 17 billion new citizens entering reproductive phase. Your ancestor worship cannot supersede biological necessity." Marcus watched the familiar dance of diplomatic theater, feeling sick to his stomach. In his briefcase lay the evidence that would expose everything, but using it would put his team and possibly Earth itself at risk. High Counselor Velnera's energy form, pulsed with ancient patterns. Both civilizations speak of needs while ignoring the greater harmony. The ethereal union has meditated on these conflicts for millennia. Perhaps. Excuse me, Marcus interrupted, standing up slowly. The chamber fell silent. Interrupting an ethereal union address was considered deeply disrespectful by galactic diplomatic protocol. Human Chen, resonance bearer Quilden's harmonic voice carried a note of warning. The ethereal counselor was not finished speaking. Marcus looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. 5 civilizations that had been at war for 400 years, all represented by beings who had been having the exact same conversation for decades. I know, Marcus said calmly, but I think we need to talk about something else first. Elena tensed in her seat, her hand moving instinctively toward her sidearm. Sarah gripped her data pad tightly, knowing what was coming. For the past 2 days, Marcus continued, I've listened to arguments that are word-for-word identical to transcripts from peace summits held 20, 50, and 100 years ago. Same complaints, same demands, same rejections. Overseer Zilmoth's antennae twitched with irritation. These are the fundamental issues preventing peace. Of course, they remain consistent. Do they? Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out the encrypted files. Or are they deliberately maintained? The chamber's atmosphere changed as Marcus activated his personal holographic projector. Financial records filled the air above the central table, showing a complex web of transactions between companies with innocuous names and delegates from all 5 civilizations. Galactic Defense Solutions, Marcus read from the display. Terraforming Unlimited. Crystal Mining Incorporated. Harmonic Disruption Industries. Deep Current Extraction. He looked up at the delegates. Anyone recognize these company names? Admiral Kexthen's reptilian features remained impassive, but Marcus caught a flicker of something in his yellow eyes. Recognition. Fear. These are the companies that have been selling weapons, equipment, and strategic intelligence to all sides of your conflicts for the past century, Marcus continued. And according to these financial records, several members of this chamber are major shareholders. Flow leader Nyx Era's tentacles moved in agitated patterns within her water suit. These accusations are highly inappropriate for a peace summit. Are they accusations? Marcus asked. Or are they facts? He gestured to the holographic display, which now showed shipping manifests. Weapons deliveries to Saurian military bases, paid for by Galactic Defense Solutions. The same company delivered identical weapons to Hive staging areas the following week. Overseer Zilmoth rose from her position, her chitinous legs clicking against the floor. How did you obtain these classified documents? Someone sent them to me, Marcus replied. Someone who wants the truth to come out. Someone who's tired of watching billions of beings die for corporate profit margins. The chamber erupted in multiple languages as delegates began arguing with each other. But Marcus wasn't finished. The corporate syndicate has been managing this war for centuries, he continued, raising his voice above the chaos. Every time peace becomes possible, they arrange an incident to restart hostilities. Every resource-rich world that changes hands, they get the extraction contracts. Every weapon sold, every ship destroyed, every life lost. It all generates profit for the same network of companies. High Counselor Velnera's energy form pulsed with what Marcus had learned to recognize as deep distress. If this is true, then we have been manipulated. We've all been manipulated, Marcus said, including humanity. We weren't invited here to broker peace. We were invited to take the blame when these talks fail. Admiral Kexthen stepped forward, his clawed hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Marcus thought the Saurian warrior might attack him. Instead, Kexthen spoke in a voice heavy with shame. The human speaks truth, he said quietly. For 70 years, my military budget has been supplemented by strategic partnerships with defense contractors. I told myself it was necessary for my people's survival. The admission hit the chamber like a shockwave. Other delegates began shifting uncomfortably. The Hive has also, benefited from resource extraction agreements. Overseer Zilmuth admitted reluctantly. We were told these partnerships helped fund our expansion needs. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and horror as the truth began to cascade through the chamber. These weren't evil beings plotting galactic destruction. They were victims of a system that had corrupted their judgment and trapped them in cycles of profitable violence. The question now, Marcus said, is what we do about it. Resonance bearer Quilden's crystalline form rang with complex harmonics that Marcus's translator rendered as deep sadness. How does one break free from a web that has been centuries in the weaving? You walk away, Marcus said simply. The chamber fell silent again. Walk away from the peace talks, from their responsibilities, from 400 years of history. I don't mean abandon your people, Marcus clarified. I mean walk away from this system. Stop playing their game. Stop following their script. Elena stood up beside him, her military bearing evident as she addressed the chamber. The financial records show something else. The corporate syndicate expected these talks to fail. They've already sold weapons for the next phase of fighting. But what happens if there is no next phase? Dr. Sarah Kim joined them, her scientific mind focusing on the practical implications. Economically, perpetual war requires constant resource investment. If the major civilizations simply stopped fighting, the entire war economy would collapse within a standard year. Flow leader Nixera's water suit bubbled as she processed this information. The deep currents have long whispered of artificial tides in our conflicts. Perhaps it is time to swim against them. But not everyone was convinced. Overseer Zilmuth's mental voice carried sharp edges of skepticism. Even if this conspiracy exists, our people's needs remain real. The hive requires expansion territory. Competition for resources will inevitably lead to conflict. Will it? Marcus asked. Or have you been told it will by the same entities that profit from conflict? He gestured to the holographic display again, showing resource allocation data. According to these records, the galaxy has enough habitable worlds and resources to support all 5 civilizations comfortably. The scarcity is artificial, maintained by territorial restrictions that serve corporate interests. Admiral Kexthen studied the data with a military strategist's eye. These numbers, if accurate, they suggest cooperation would benefit all species more than competition, which is exactly why the corporate syndicate has worked so hard to prevent cooperation, Marcus replied. High Counselor Velnera's ancient consciousness seemed to reach a decision. The Ethereal Union will withdraw from all defense contracts immediately. We will share our meditation techniques freely to help other species overcome the psychological conditioning that has trapped us in cycles of violence. The Crystalline Federation will terminate all mining agreements with entities connected to this syndicate. Quilden added, their harmonic voice resonating with determination. We will offer our geological knowledge to help locate new resources that require no territorial disputes. But as the delegates began to embrace the possibility of real change, the chamber's lights suddenly flickered and went out. Emergency power activated, bathing everything in red light. Belena's military instincts kicked in immediately. The station's communication systems have been jammed. Someone doesn't want this conversation leaving the chamber. The chamber doors sealed with a pneumatic hiss, trapping everyone inside. The corporate syndicate, Marcus said grimly. They know we've exposed them. Over the station's communication system, a cold mechanical voice began speaking. Attention delegates. You have been exposed to classified information that threatens galactic security. Please remain calm while the situation is resolved. Elena drew her sidearm, scanning the chamber for threats. They're going to eliminate the witnesses. But Admiral Kexthen surprised everyone by laughing. A sound like grinding stone that Marcus had never heard from a Saurian before. They have made an error, Kexthen said, his warrior instincts overriding years of corporate conditioning. They have trapped 5 military civilizations in a single room and given us a common enemy. Overseer Zilmuth's compound eyes glittered with new purpose. A hive can coordinate defensive actions through quantum entanglement. Our forces throughout the galaxy can act simultaneously. The Ethereal Union's meditation networks span multiple dimensions, Velnera added. This jamming cannot block consciousness itself. Marcus realized something remarkable was happening. For the first time in 4 centuries, the 5 civilizations were working together instead of against each other. Flow leader Nixera, Marcus called out, "Your people's deep space navigation networks, can they bypass the communication blackout?" "The deep currents flow through all barriers," she replied, her tentacles already working on a specialized communication device. "The Aquatic Assembly's quantum navigation beacons will carry our truth to every corner of the galaxy." As the delegates worked together to overcome the corporate syndicate's attempt to silence them, Marcus felt a profound shift in the chamber's atmosphere. This wasn't the scripted performance they had been trapped in for centuries. This was real cooperation born from shared purpose. The chamber doors suddenly burst open as station security forces rushed in, armed with weapons designed to subdue multiple species simultaneously. "Stand down immediately," the security leader commanded. "You are all under arrest for violation of galactic security protocols." Marcus looked at the armed figures and made another decision that would echo through history. Instead of surrendering or fighting, he simply walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Elena called after him. "I'm walking away," Marcus replied. "Just like I said." The security forces seemed confused by this response. Their weapons were designed for combat or surrender, not for someone simply leaving. Admiral Kex then followed Marcus toward the door. "The human is correct. We are no longer participants in their performance." One by one, the other delegates joined the exodus. They walked past the confused security forces, past the weapon emplacements, past centuries of conditioning that told them conflict was inevitable. Behind them, the evidence of the corporate syndicate's manipulation continued broadcasting through every communication network their combined civilizations could access. The truth spread like wildfire through the galaxy, reaching billions of beings who had never understood why their species couldn't find peace. As Marcus Chen walked through the corridors of Harmony Station, followed by the representatives of 5 ancient civilizations, he reflected on the power of simple human stubbornness. Sometimes the most revolutionary act wasn't fighting the system or trying to reform it from within. Sometimes revolution meant refusing to play the game at all. Within a standard galactic month, the corporate syndicate had collapsed as species after species withdrew from their defense contracts and resource agreements. The artificial scarcity that had fueled centuries of war evaporated as civilizations began sharing resources and technology freely. The peace that followed wasn't perfect. There were still disputes, still misunderstandings, still competition for resources. But for the first time in 400 years, these conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. And it all started because one human diplomat stood up in a room full of the most powerful beings in the galaxy and decided to tell the truth. Then he walked away. The galaxy would never be the same.